I want you to think about something you worked for. Really worked for. Not something that was handed to you, not something that came easily, but something you saved for, planned for, and finally held in your hands after a long time of wanting it. Now I want you to think about the moment you shared that achievement with the people who were supposed to be proudest of you. I saved for 2 years. 24 months of careful budgeting, of saying no to things I wanted, of watching a number in a savings account climb slowly towards something that meant independence to me. And on a Saturday morning in April I walked into a dealership and I bought myself a car. My own money. My own decision. My own car. I called my parents from the parking lot. I was smiling so hard my face hurt. My mother picked up on the second ring. I said, "Mom, I just bought a car." I did it. I finally did it. There was a silence on the other end that I did not know how to read. And then my mother said, "Jily, what have you done?" Not, "Congratulations." Not, "We are so proud of you." Not even, "Tell me about it." What have you done? My name is Jily Loss. I am 32 years old. And the reason my parents were furious about a car I bought with my own money told me everything I needed to know about the life they had been planning for me without asking. Welcome to Truth Hardy Stories. This is the channel where real women share the stories they were never supposed to tell. If this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe, because every story we share will stay with you long after it ends. Now let us get back to where we were. Let me tell you about my family. Because the car is not really about the car, and I think you already sense that. It is about a pattern that had been building for 32 years and that a single phone call from a dealership parking lot finally made impossible to ignore. My parents, Vincent and Gloria Loss, are both 60 now. They immigrated to the United States from the Philippines in the early 90s and built a life here through the specific combination of sacrifice and stubbornness and love that first-generation immigrant parents build lives with. They worked hard. They gave me and my younger brother everything they could. I do not say any of what I am about to say without holding that alongside it. My father works in logistics. My mother has run a small alterations business from our family home for 25 years. They are proud people, proud of where they came from, proud of what they built, proud of their children in a way that is real and also, and this is the complicated part, conditional. Conditional on what, exactly? That is what I spent most of my 20s trying to understand. The expectation in my family was not stated directly. It was more like weather, something that was always present, that you learned to dress for, that shaped your decisions without anyone having to say out loud what the forecast was. The expectation was that I would be consulted with. That I would include my parents in decisions, not just the big obvious ones like career and relationships, but the texture of my life. Where I lived. How I spent my money. What I drove. Who I spent my time with. I grew up believing this was normal. Most of the people I knew growing up had similar dynamics, first-generation households where the family operated as a unit and individual decisions were understood to be family decisions. What I did not understand until much later was that there is a version of that dynamic that is loving, and a version that is controlling, and that they can look identical from the inside until the day you do something on your own and discover which version you have actually been living in. The car was the day I found out. I had been driving a car my parents owned since I was 22. Not my car, their car, in my name technically but understood by everyone to belong to the family in the way that certain things in my family belong to the family rather than to any individual. It was a 2009 Honda Civic that had 140,000 miles on it when I started driving it, and that by the time I was 30 had become something I spent more money maintaining than it was worth. My mechanic, a patient man named Gerald who had seen the car 3 times in 1 year, said to me very gently in October of that year, "Jily, at some point you have to make a decision about this car. I said, I know. He said, I am not trying to upsell you. I am telling you as someone who has watched this vehicle decline that you are throwing good money after bad. Drove home that evening and I made a decision. I was going to save enough money to buy my own car. Not a family car. Not a car that belonged to the collective. My car registered in my name, paid for with my money, representing no one's choice but mine. I did not tell my parents I was saving for it. Not because I was hiding it, but because I had learned that announcing intentions in my family created a different dynamic than simply doing things. When I announced intentions, they became collaborative projects. They became things my parents had opinions about, offered contributions toward, felt ownership of. I did not want that. I wanted to do this one thing, completely, entirely, on my own. So I saved quietly. 24 months of it. I made a budget and I followed it. I stopped eating out during the week. I picked up freelance work on weekends. I said no to 2 vacations I genuinely wanted to take. I watched the number grow in a savings account that I had opened specifically for this purpose and that I did not connect to any of my family's shared financial accounts. By March I had enough. I spent 2 weeks researching cars. I knew what I wanted, something reliable, fuel-efficient, with low mileage and a clean service history. I found it at a dealership 30 minutes from my apartment. A 2019 Toyota Corolla. 48,000 miles. 1 previous owner. Every service record documented. I test drove it on a Friday. I went back on Saturday morning with a cashier's check. I signed the paperwork at 11:15 in the morning. I sat in the driver's seat of my own car, my own, completely mine, and I called my mother. She picked up on the second ring, the way she always did when I called on a weekend morning. I said, Mom, I just bought a car. I did it. I finally did it. The silence lasted about 4 seconds. In a phone call with my mother, 4 seconds of silence is its own language. She said, Jily, what have you done? I said, I bought a car, Mom. A 2019 Corolla. I saved for 2 years. It is mine. She said, without telling us. I said, I wanted to do this on my own. She said, you should have talked to us first. I said, Mom, it is my money. It is my car. I am 32 years old. She said, that is not the point. I said, then what is the point? She said, your father needs to know about this. She said it the way she said things when she was too upset to continue the conversation herself. And then she said, I have to go. And she hung up. I sat in the parking lot of the dealership in my new car with my phone in my hand. My father called 20 minutes later. His voice had the specific quality it got when he was managing his emotions very carefully. Controlled and quiet in a way that was more concerning than if he had been loud. He said, your mother told me. I said, Dad, I know you are upset. But I saved this money myself. I made this decision myself. I am proud of it. He said, this was not the right time, Jily. I said, what do you mean the right time? He said, there are things happening that you do not know about. Things we have been planning. This changes things significantly. I said, what things, Dad? What have you been planning? There was a pause. He said, come home this weekend. We need to talk as a family. He did not tell me what the things were. He did not explain what I had inadvertently disrupted. He just said, come home this weekend, in the voice of a man who had just learned that a plan he had been making, without telling me, had been complicated by a plan I had made without telling him. Drove home to my apartment in my new car. That should have felt like triumph, and felt instead like I was about to walk into a room I was not prepared for. the following Saturday I drove my new car to my parents' house for the first time. My mother looked at it in the driveway with an expression I could not fully read. Not admiration. Not anger exactly. Something more like the look of someone reassessing a situation they thought they understood. My brother Kevin was there. He is 28 and still lives at home, and he had the specific energy he gets when he knows something I do not, slightly careful, slightly watchful, sat in the living room. My mother brought tea. My father sat in the chair he always sat in, the one that had always seemed like the most important chair in the room, and he looked at his hands for a moment before he spoke. He said, "We have been planning to buy you a car." I said, "What?" He said, "Your mother and I have been saving. We had found something, a car we thought you would like, and we were going to give it to you for your birthday in June." I sat with that for a moment. My birthday was 8 weeks away. I said, "Dad, I did not know that." He said, "No. Because we wanted it to be a surprise." My mother said, "We have been saving for a year. We had almost enough. Your father was going to put in the rest." I looked at my parents, these two people who had worked their entire lives to give their children things, and I felt something complicated move through me that was not quite guilt and not quite resentment and was actually both of those things at once. I said, "I did not know. I genuinely did not know." My father said, "We know that. But Jily, and this is what we need to say, this is not only about the car. This is about a pattern. You have always done this. You have always made decisions without including us. Without consulting us. Without giving us the chance to be part of your life in the way parents are supposed to be part of their children's lives." I said, "I am 32, Dad." He said, "And we are your parents." My brother said nothing. He was looking at the carpet. My mother said, "We are not angry that you bought a car. We are angry because you did not trust us enough to tell us what you were planning. We could have helped. We could have contributed. We could have been part of something important to you. And instead you kept it from us and you did it alone." I looked at my mother. I said, "Mom, I wanted to do one thing completely by myself. Just one thing. I saved for 2 years without help from anyone. I made every decision myself. I was proud of that. I thought you would be proud of that too." She said, "We are proud of you. We are always proud of you." She said it, and I believed she meant it, but there was something in the room that the pride was sitting underneath. Something heavier and more complicated. I said, She said, "But we want to be in your life, Jily. We want to be included. That is all we have ever wanted." We talked for 3 hours that Saturday. Not all of it was comfortable. Very little of it was comfortable. But it was, and I want to give my family credit for this, honest. More honest than most conversations we had ever had. My father talked about what it had felt like to build a life in this country without the support of his own parents who were still in the Philippines. He talked about how the family, our specific family, the 4 of us, had been the thing that made everything make sense. He said, "When you shut us out of your decisions," and he used that word, shut out, "it feels like you are shutting out the thing that kept us going." I heard him say that, and I felt it land in a way that was real. I said, "Dad, I am not shutting you out. I am building a life. My own life. That is not the same thing." He said, "It feels the same from where I am sitting." My mother said, "We are not trying to control you, Jily. We are trying to stay connected to you." I said, Mom, can I say something honestly?" She said, "Of course." I said, "The way we have always done things, the way everything is a family decision, the way I have always felt like I needed permission, or at least consensus, before I did anything, that has made it very hard for me to feel like an adult in my own life. I love you. I love this family. But I also need to be able to make a decision and feel good about it without worrying about how it lands here. My mother was quiet for a moment. My father looked at the carpet the way Kevin had been looking at the carpet earlier. Then my mother said, "We did not know you felt that way." I said, "I know. That is partly why I am saying it now." My brother, who had been silent for 2 hours, said, "She has a point." In a very Kevin way. Simple, direct, delivered without elaboration. My father looked at him. Kevin said, "I am just saying. She has a point." My father was quiet for a long time. Long enough that the room became a different quality of silent, the kind that means something is being processed rather than avoided. Then he said, "I need to think about what you have said." I said, "I know, Dad. Take the time you need." My mother poured more tea. We stayed for another hour. We did not resolve everything. Some things cannot be resolved in an afternoon, but we had said things that had been waiting to be said for a long time. And the room felt different for it. Not lighter exactly, but more honest. The weeks after that Saturday were complicated in the specific way that honest conversations leave things complicated, where you have said the real thing and now have to figure out how to live alongside having said it. My mother called me twice that first week. The calls were shorter than usual and slightly careful, the way calls are when two people are navigating new terrain and are not entirely sure of the footing. But she called. That mattered. My father did not call for 10 days. That was not unusual for him. He processed things slowly and privately, and I had learned not to read silence from him as rejection. But on the 11th day he sent me a text message. My father almost never texted. He belonged to the generation that considered texting an inadequate form of communication for anything that mattered. The text said, "I thought about what you said. I think you are right that we have put a lot on you that was about our own needs and not about yours. I am still your father and I will always have opinions. But I hear what you said about needing to be your own person. I am proud of you, Jily. The car is a nice car." I read that text 4 times. Then I called him. He picked up on the first ring. I said, "Dad. Thank you for that text." He said, "Do not make it a big thing. I am working on it." I said, "I know. Me too." He said, "How is the car running?" I said, "Perfectly." He said, "Good. That Corolla is a reliable vehicle. I would have chosen the same one." I laughed. A real laugh, the kind that surprised me. He laughed too. Briefly and slightly reluctantly but genuinely. We talked for 40 minutes about nothing in particular. It was one of the best phone calls we had ever had. Want to be honest about what the car conversation changed and what it did not change. Because I think people expect these kinds of stories to end with transformation, with a family that was one way and became another, and that is not exactly what happened. My parents did not stop being who they are. My mother still has opinions about my decisions. My father still has the instinct to be consulted. Those things are built into them at a level that a single honest conversation, however necessary, cannot fully reorganize. But something shifted. A small but real shift in the quality of our interactions. My mother asks more often now, instead of assuming. She says, "What are you thinking about doing?" instead of, "Have you considered?" It is a small difference in language. It is not a small difference in what it communicates. My father has started calling me on Sunday evenings. Not to check on my decisions. Just to talk. About his week. About the news. About a documentary he watched that he thought I might find interesting. We have had more genuinely enjoyable phone calls in the past year than we had in the 3 years before my brother Kevin told me a month after the family meeting that he had his own version of the same conversation with my parents the following week. He said he had been waiting for someone to go first. I said, was it useful? He said, terrifying. But yes, I told my therapist, I see Dr. Reyes, who I have been with for 2 years, about the car and the family meeting and everything that followed. She said something that I have thought about many times since. She said, you gave your family the gift of knowing who you actually are. That is not something everyone does. And it is not something everyone survives doing. The fact that your family is still intact, still trying, is not nothing. I said, it does not always feel like a gift. She said, gifts rarely do while you are giving them. They feel like risk. The gift part comes later. I am starting to see the gift part now. I want to say something about the people who love us most being the hardest to be honest with. Because I think that is the real subject of this story. Not the car was just the thing that finally made the conversation unavoidable. The real subject is what happens when you love someone, when you genuinely, deeply love them, and you also need something from them that they do not naturally give. My parents love me. I have never doubted that. The fury about the car came from love, from plans they had been making because they loved me and wanted to do something for me. The desire to be consulted came from love, from wanting to be close, to be involved, to matter in my daily life, and the thing I needed, the space to make my own decisions, to be my own person, to feel like an adult who did not need permission. That came from love too. From wanting to be worthy of the life they had worked to give me. From wanting to be someone they could genuinely be proud of, not just dutiful toward. 2 kinds of love running into each other at a dealership on a Saturday morning in April. If you are in a family where love and control have gotten tangled together, and I think more of us are than would like to admit it, I want to say this clearly. You are allowed to name the tangle. You are allowed to say, I love you and I also need something different from what you are giving me. You are allowed to make a decision with your own money and your own mind and feel good about it, without waiting for permission from people who love you but whose love does not grant them ownership of your choices. The conversation will be uncomfortable. I will not pretend otherwise. It may be the most uncomfortable conversation you have ever had. But on the other side of it, there is a version of your relationship with your family that is more honest. More real. More capable of holding both who they are and who you are, without either of those things having to be smaller. My parents are still my parents. I am still their daughter. And I drive a 2019 Toyota Corolla that I saved for, chose, and bought completely on my own. My father says it is a reliable vehicle. He is right. My name is Jily. I am 32 years old. I saved for 2 years and bought myself a car. My parents were not proud, they were furious. And the reason they told me opened a conversation that changed all of us. Thank you for being here today. If this story moved you, please share it. Someone out there is sitting in a parking lot right now, holding a moment of independence, and wondering if they were allowed to want it. They were. Take care of yourselves.